The year was 1928. Calvin Coolidge was finishing his 5th year as President of the United States, and life was good for many Americans as they were nearing the end of the 1920s, unaware of the turmoil that was about to happen. A family could buy a new Sears kit home, known as the Natoma, for as little as $200, and the iconic Rice Krispies breakfast cereal, along with Snap, Crackle, and Pop, was introduced to Americans. Prohibition was still the law of the land, but in return, we were introduced to the soon-to-be ubiquitous sliced bread, which cost 9 cents a loaf. A brand new Ford Roadster, which you could get in any color as long as it was black, cost $500, while gasoline was 21 cents a gallon. The number one song in 1928 was T for Texas by Jimmie Rodgers.
T for Texas, T for Tennessee. T for Texas, T for Tennessee.
Movie tickets cost 25 cents, and many paid that to see the first all-talking movie, The Lights of New York.
Closed up for the night, Jim?
Yep. And for all the business I did, I might as well have been closed up all day.
One other notable event in 1928 occurred on June 6th in Rockford, Illinois.
My name is Mary Lou Rydstrom. I was born in Rockford, Illinois on June 2nd, 1928.
Growing up, you were a Rockfordian.
Oh, absolutely. Graduated from East High in 1946. Lincoln East High, Lincoln in 1943, and I had 1 year of nurses training at Swedish American. And then I was able to get married, so I escaped nurses training.
You didn't like being a nurse?
It was a poor choice.
So who were your parents?
My mother's name was Morel Genevieve Anderson. She was born in 1902. Her mother's name was Morel and Fanny Anderson. And my dad was born August 13th of 1900. And his parents were Charles and Maria Englund. Englund. They were from Sweden.
So a couple of sentences. Describe your mom.
She was a favorite of her father's. Now, he had a grocery store on the corner of 5th Avenue and 12th Street. And when she was 16, she quit high school and she got a job at the bank that's on the corner of East State and I think it's North 3rd Street. She started there when she was 16, and she spent 49 years there. She was off for a while after I was born, then she went back. I spent probably 90% of my very young early years living with and being taken care of by my grandmother and grandfather. Grandpa had a grocery store on the corner of 5th Avenue and 12th Street. And when my dad met my mother, and they got married in 1923, he went to work at Grandpa's grocery store and was there for 17 years and never had a paycheck. My mother worked at the bank, and the money that she earned supported us. But my grandparents were very good to me. I have excellent memories of them. And my dad was peachy keen. He was not only my hero, but my crutch. And that was it. He was that good to me. I'd be outside playing in the summer, like when I was in grade school. About once every half an hour or so, I'd run back to the screen door going into the grocery store, and I say, Dad? Yeah. Are you there? Yeah. Okay. And I'd run off again, come back, short time. Dad? Are you there? Yeah. Okay. As long as he was there, I was okay. And like I say, I spent a lot of my life living my earlier years with my grandparents up over the grocery store. My folks lived a couple houses behind the store in a little brick bungalow on 12th Street, same block. And my dad would walk to and from work. My mother had the car and went to work at the bank. She worked, like I say, she worked there 49 years and finally retired. Then my dad, in the sometime in, I think in the summer of 1940, he left the grocery store after 23 years, and he went to work at Matson Machines down off of Kishwaukee Street. I think it's Mattison. And he worked there till he was 65, but he worked 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And he was there during the war, and his job was what they call a scraper, and on the top of this big sheet of metal. And you had to get a pattern on there. And he did that till he was 65, and then finally he retired. And then he helped take care of my boys, picked them up after school or somewhere, and took care of them till I got out of work. So I have tremendous thoughts and feelings towards him.
So how would you describe the relationship between your mom and dad?
Good. My dad was, he could be quiet. Now, he loved to kid around. He had a very dry sense of humor. And he liked to kid around, and he laughed. And he would tease the heck out of my mother. They had a very good relationship, very good.
What do you remember most about their relationship?
Mostly, it started when my thoughts about him, remembering him, when I was about 6, 7 years old. And whenever I saw them together, they were always laughing and having a good time. They didn't seem to have any, there was no problems between them. But my dad was a very easygoing person. My mother was in charge. But it worked out well. They had many years of marriage, many years, more than 50.
50 years of marriage?
Yes, their 50th anniversary was 1973, September 1st.
Earliest memory of your childhood?
Going with my dad, I was about 4 or 5. My dad would have to either go deliver grocery stores from the grocery store. He had to deliver groceries, I'm sorry. Or he had to go do an errand. One of the places we would go to was down off of East State Street, right off of the river. There was a big building there. It was a grocery supply building. And I'd get in a truck with my dad. We'd ride down there, pick up stuff, go back. I was with him a lot, helping deliver groceries, picking up supplies, just hanging around the grocery store with him. Because like I say, I'd run to the door, Dad, are you there? It was very important to me to know that he was there. Absolutely. It was my life.
And you said he worked for a while but didn't get paid?
About 17 years. My mother worked at the bank, They fed us, they housed us a lot, and that's what he did. He was willing to do it. There was tough times at the grocery store.
As you were growing up, did you have any responsibilities?
Not as a very young child, no. But later on, when we lived in this little brick bungalow on the 600 block on 12th Street, a lot of times I ended up running the vacuum just to help out. That was my my contribution.
Didn't have to do dishes or make your bed or?
I was responsible for my own bedroom. Now, living in this 600 block on 12th Street, my mother decided that I was going to be a doll collector. And I think I ended up, I was told, with like 400 dolls. There was a shelf here and a shelf here and here, and they were stacked up. I don't know what the purpose of it was, because I had no use for them. I couldn't care less. But that was it. Finally, she got rid of them, and then I ended up with that little room as my front bedroom. It worked out fine. I think she sold the dolls. I hope so.
So if you didn't like dolls, what kind of things did you like or like to do when you were young, growing up?
Playing outside, being with my dad, that was very important. Going on errands with him, or going to the store to pick up supplies. Just being around him in the store. It was essential to me.
Did you and your friends play games when you were growing up?
Outside, at night we'd play hide and seek. Now we played outside until 9 o'clock when Grandpa closed the grocery store. And there was this one little street light up at the intersection of 5th Avenue and 12th Street. So wherever we went, it was dark. But we weren't afraid. We absolutely were not afraid. Today, I wouldn't let my child out after 6 o'clock.
You didn't play games like hopscotch or?
Oh, yes, we had chalk somehow, and we'd put chalk drawings on the sidewalk in front of the grocery store, or down where on the driveway in our little brick bungalow on 12th Street, and hippity-hopped all over the place.
Were you good at it?
Of course. No, it was fun. You don't see it at all today. I don't think kids know what hopscotch is.
Family traditions?
Well, for many years, it was a big get-together, Thanksgiving. We go to the apartment over the grocery store, and Grandma would fix the meal, and we'd have Christmas up there. But there were some funny things that happened. When Grandma fixed the meals, and my dad was there, and my mother's brother, my Uncle Kenny, and they were just like this, and they loved to tease. What they would do is Grandma would be washing the dishes, and my Uncle Kenny and my dad would be wiping them dry, and then when she wasn't looking, they'd go put them back in the in the pile. Finally, she realized she was washing quite a few dishes. But that's the way those two gentlemen liked to be. It made them happy. And it was good for me, because I had a lot of fun watching them do that. I should try that. I should have tried that on my kids.
What's the most memorable event of your childhood?
Of my childhood? Don't mention the piano. We can talk about that later. The memorable things of my childhood, being at the grocery store, knowing my dad was there, and my grandma was upstairs, because I knew she would feed me, and I knew my dad was downstairs. And he was extremely important in my life, all my life.
So your grandparents seem to play a big role in your life.
Absolutely.
Describe your grandparents.
Grandpa started the grocery store. It happened some years before that, but he was always not feeling well. He had ulcers at that time, and the only thing they had was something called sippy powders. You take the powders and mix it, and he'd take that at night before. It was supposed to coat the ulcer. That's all they had. And they were really good to me. I can remember even, like I say, I was 4 or 5, being up over the grocery store, watching Grandma mix cake mix. Well, cake. She'd take a couple of handfuls of flour, dump some sugar, never measured anything, never measured anything. And it would come out, that cake would be about that high. And it was good. She was from Sweden, a very, very good cook. And my grandfather was from Norway. He came over with he was the youngest of 9 children. When he was 2, they came, he called it steerage, bottom of the boat. 9 kids, probably washing diapers by hand, rinsing them out in the ocean or whatever. But they made it. But I really don't know much about their childhood. They were very quiet about it, really quiet.
So I know you went to a lot of schools in Rockford.
Well, no, not really. Well, I went to a white school. We lived, like I say, on 5th Avenue, 12th Street. Well, I went to John Nelson School for kindergarten. Then the 1st grade, when they changed the boundaries, I went to white school, 4th Avenue and 10th Street. Walked to and from, no matter the weather. And finished 6th grade there, and then Lincoln for 3 years, and then East High for 3 years. And I walked up and down 9th Avenue from 14th Street to 24th Street to East High, and put a few miles on.
What was your favorite subject?
I like math. Yeah, I had Algebra 1 and 2, Geometry 1 and 2, and I ended up with Algebra 3. I've always liked math. So it worked out fine for me.
What did you like about math?
The challenge. You always had to keep thinking. You know, you had to, with algebra, you had to figure out the formula. I really enjoyed it. I wish I could have continued farther, but I just had that year of nurse's training, which was of no value to me.
Did you have a favorite teacher?
In grade school, yes, Miss Yerkson. She was the 6th grade teacher, but she was also the assistant to the principal. She was very good to me. She let me dust her room every day. That was a good deal. That was in grade school. In Lincoln, I think probably my homeroom teacher. Her name was Muriel Lee. And then she got married. And then there was a gentleman that came in for a couple of years, and then he went into the Army. East High, I liked them all. I liked all my teachers. I had math, 3 years of math. I had chemistry. I had a real nice homeroom teacher, Mr. Freilich. And I could have done without the language teacher. Oh, I had to take Spanish for 2 years.
What did high schoolers do for fun?
High schoolers do
What
for
did you
fun.
do for fun?
Okay, I started in September of '43. And of course, Friday night was football night. And sometimes my girlfriend's father would pick us up and give us a ride to Bayer Stadium. And then we would walk from Bayer Stadium down to 200 South Madison for the original YW. And we'd stand in the balcony and watch all the other kids down on the floor dancing. And then when that was done, probably around 10 o'clock, we'd walk from up Madison Street to East State, about the 200 or 300 block, and then walk home. At that time, Charles Street met East State somewhere down around 6th Street. So my girlfriend would go up East State, and I'd go Charles Street, and we'll walk home. And I'd get to Charles and 13th, walk down, and go to the house, the apartment on 900 block on 14th. But I had a very strange experience one night. I got on Charles Street to the corner of Charles and 13th. So I turned right and headed down 13th because 14th Street didn't have a bridge. Going down 13th, and between 4th and 5th Avenue, there was an alley. And I got to that alley, and just like that, I stopped, just like I hit a brick wall. I don't know to this day what happened, what it was. But I turned around and I ran back up to the corner, and the man that had this store on the corner, he was starting to close up, and I'm pounding on the door, and he let me in. And I called my dad, and he came and picked me up. I have no idea what it was, but it was just like I hit a brick wall. I'm not kidding. It scared the heck out of me. But it was during the war. People didn't have gas to go cruising around. But when I lived over the grocery store, sometimes I would walk up from 5th Avenue and 12th Street to 5th Avenue and 11th Street. And I'd get to 11th Street, and there would be trucks going by, with the open thing. And there were German prisoners standing there, and they always waved at me, and I waved at them. But they were stationed at Camp Grant. They were in custody out at Camp Grant. I'll never forget that. So that war left a little bit on my mind.
All of us remember seminal events in our lives. We can tell where we were. How did you first learn about World War II? Where were you and how did you first learn?
World War II, remember it real well. It's printed right here. Sunday afternoon, December 7th, 1941, sitting in my bedroom doing homework, and there was a little radio right next to me, and they broke in on it And I had never heard that happen before. And this man says, the Japs have bombed Pearl Harbor. And I jumped up out of my chair and I ran out towards the kitchen. I had to hold on to the door frame because I was running so. Dad, the Japs just bombed Pearl Harbor. Where's Pearl Harbor? But it left such, that'll never go away. No way. If you did an autopsy, you'd see it printed there.
Once you heard it, and you had time to think about it, what did you think? What did you think?
I didn't. Because I was 13 and a half. I was still playing, having a good time. Hadn't started to work yet. There were other things to think about. A couple of the young men in the neighborhood of the grocery store went into the service. So I realized some of the neighbors were gone. There were 6 kids from East High, I think, that were killed in the war somewhere along the line. I really didn't know anybody that went into the service because I was only, 13, something like that.
Did your life change in any way once the war started?
So, a little bit, mostly being a little more confined because we had gas stamps. And my mother had to have gas to get from our house on 14th Street down to East State and North 4th Street to get to work. My dad rode with another gentleman from somewhere in the neighborhood. That, and then in the grocery store, there were food stamps. Sugar was one thing. And there was something else, but at this point I don't know what it was. Left a big impression on me, World War II.
So owning a grocery store was kind of a good thing at that time because you always kind of had food, didn't you?
Yes, we always had food, but like fruits and vegetables, at that time, by the window, there was a thing like this, and Grandpa would put the fruits and the vegetables. No refrigeration. So what was deteriorating is what Grandma got to fix. I always had food, no complaints. No complaints. Oh, and then they were very careful. You could, you weren't often, you couldn't buy too many shoes for some reason or other. We went to what was DJ Stewart and Company at that time. It was West State and Main Street. And that's where I got my shoes because I had kind of a long, narrow foot and it was a little hard to find shoes. One pair a year.
So where were you when you heard that the war had ended?
I'm not really sure remembering where I was, but I can remember going downtown with this huge crowd on what do they call it, VJ Day or something? It would be 1945, downtown Main Street. So I was like between sophomore and junior year or something like that. I was just out there with hundreds and hundreds of others. And I think slowly after that, Camp Grant closed down. But they had a lot of German prisoners out there. I never saw any Japanese ones, never. I don't know where they were, if they ever had any. But there were Germans.
Describe your first date.
Nothing when I was a sophomore. When I was, I believe, a junior, there was this very nice young boy up at Bethesda Church. We went out on one date. And then later on, he did go into the Army, and he did pass away. There was another one that somewhere in my junior year, I had a date. I dated very, very little. But during my junior and senior year, I worked out at J.O. Clark. A lot of times walked to and from work. And then I met this young man. We dated for about a year. Then went our way, and I ended up getting married to him some years back. But his first wife had died. They were of another church, and that was a good marriage. But he was not of a religion that my mother approved of.
So what kind of things did you do on dates? Where did you go?
Actually, we went to the Coronado Theater. And I don't remember the ones that I dated having a car. We'd walk to the bus, walk downtown, walk. Sometimes coming home, we'd go to Irwin's, which I think was located on East State and North 2nd Street, something like that. Go in there and have a Coke, walk home. Then he'd have to walk back home.
So, did you have a favorite movie?
I liked Gone with the Wind. Yeah. And, but there was another one, Casablanca. Oh, I wish I still had the opportunity to see it nowadays. It just left such an impression on me. I don't know why. But a very handsome young man and young lady that were, the stars. But it pertained to the war. Casablanca was in Africa, wasn't it? Or somewhere around the Eastern Mediterranean. That's my #1 movie of all time.
You do a lot of things on the radio.
Well, that's all we had.
So,
We didn't have our first TV until 1952. And I can remember that. It came, no cabinet, it was just sitting on a piece of wood. Okay.
did you have a favorite radio program that you liked listening to?
The Lone Ranger. What else was there? Oh, he was my idol.
Favorite song when you were growing up as a teenager?
I think it was from Casablanca, As Time Goes By. I wish I had a copy of it now.
You must remember this, a kiss is just a kiss, a sigh is just a sigh. The fundamental things apply as time goes by.
As a teenager, did you ever get in trouble for doing anything?
I didn't dare to. I didn't dare to do anything wrong. No way. Absolutely not. If I was told to practice 5 hours, I did it. But I knew my dad was around.
Did you ever do anything that your parents didn't know you did?
Yeah. But I've chosen not to remember them now. Oh, my mother worked at this bank downtown, and she ended up there 49 years, and became acquainted with this lady. Her name was Dorothy Vogel, and she was the premier piano teacher in Rockford. So, having become acquainted with her, my mother signed me up. The thing for me was having this teacher. I had to have the best. That was it for her. I had to have the best. It was important. But I was 6 years old. And I started practicing. At that time, we had an old piano, the upright had the back on it. And I had to practice a half an hour a day. And then in the summer, as I got a little bit older, I had to practice an hour a day. Fortunately, I spent a lot of my time during that time living with my grandparents. So I'd practice 15 minutes, and my grandmother would say, oh, she did an hour. So I was always very thankful of her. She was very, very good to me.
Tell me the story about the piano incident and how that all came about.
When I was about 10, I was home alone, and we had just gotten that little I call it Betsy Ross spinet. That's what they would call it, I think. I think I was about 10 or 12. I was home alone. And on the piano was a pencil. And the eraser was gone, so it had just the metal part that held the eraser. So I went down to the very bottom key and went all the way up to the top. And I damaged each key with a gouge in it. And she never said a word. Never.
I was at East High School recently. And I was in the gym taking some pictures, and I happened to look down the floor at one end of the gym, and there's this big black line that goes around the perimeter. You told a story of the softball thrown in. So tell me that story again and how that happened.
Okay, this young lady's name is Jean Sion, and I had known her since the 9th grade. She had come in, I think, from we called them country schools at that time. Now they're on 11th Street. But she really had the torso of a man. She was very good at whatever she did. But after school one day, this was probably our senior year, Miss Brill, our gym teacher, who sponsored the after-school GAA, Girls Athletic Association, a program. And Jean had a ball, and the distance that she had to function in was like from the south wall where the water fountains were, and the black outline of the basketball court. It was maybe 10 feet. And Miss Brill gave her this ball, and she said, if you can throw that and get it out the window up on the, where the band balcony is, and then there was windows behind that on the outer wall of the building, I'll pay for the broken glass. So Jean had just like 10 feet. Now, I don't know if she had a hard ball or softball. I'm assuming hard. Easy. And she just cranked it up, and boy, that ball went up across the basketball court, up over the balcony where the band would play, and out the window. It didn't hit a frame. It went through the glass. And we all ran out, including the teacher, and there was the ball way out in the front yard, rolled down. Isn't that amazing?
You talked a little bit about tunnels that ran under the street.
Oh, yeah, on East State Street, in front of Highland School.
Where would Highland School be now in that area?
It's about a block east of Paris Avenue. So we're right, there's a small business area there. But at that time, and when I was in high school, there was a tunnel underneath East State Street. And it ran from Highland School, so the kids didn't have to worry about crossing that busy street, underneath the East State, and came up in front of this little business district that was across. And there weren't a lot of kids, but they provided safety for them. I don't know if that's still there. I would imagine it's probably collapsed since then. I mean, I'm going back quite a few years. But they provided a tunnel there for the Highland School kids, because the Highland School covered quite an area across the street down towards Charles Street, and had children from there. Some of them went to John Nelson, others went to Highland. I really didn't want to become a nurse. I was happy. I was going to be happy just looking for another job. But somehow or other, I was kind of influenced into it. Well, my mother's sister had been a nurse, so I was quite a bit aware of what it was like. So I enrolled. It's Swedish American. We had their old original building for studies, and we did started doing nighttime work, bedpans, back rubs, and things like that. Well, one night I had this gentleman. His name was Mr. Fagerstrom, and I'll never forget that. And I had him for bedtime care. You do the back rub, straighten out the sheets, take care of the bedpan. So I went and emptied the bedpan, and when I came back, he had upchucked, all over the place. So I had to redo the bed, and then we had this little, they called them Nemesis pans. It's a little kidney-shaped pan. That, if they had to spit or anything like that. Well, while I was out of the room emptying the bedpan, he upchucked. A lot of it on the bed, but some went in this emesis pan. So I got all the sheets replaced and got him all cleaned up and everything. Then I went to the bedpan hopper where I would empty this emesis pan. Clunk. His false teeth were in there, but I didn't see him floating. So I came out and then informed him. I don't remember what he said, but I had to go out and tell the head nurse, Catherine Balmer, and she had served in the South Pacific for some time. So I went out and told her, and I've never seen women's lips curl up before, but hers did. Then the next day I went down and I saw Mrs. Palm, Mrs. Elizabeth Palm. She was head nurse in the whole Swedish American, the original Swedish American. And she just sat there and she said, "I understand." That's all she said. And I left training about 2 days left after that. Oh, I've never forgotten that, but it gives me something to laugh about. So I don't know if they reimbursed him for his false teeth or if he ever got any more. But he probably could have gone to a 10-cent store and gotten a set, and who knows.
So what job did you have before you decided to try being a nurse?
Well, the day I finished ninth grade at Lincoln, and this was 1943, I went down to the 400 block on West State Street. There was a bakery there, Lang's Bakery. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Lang were good friends of my folks, so they decided I could come in and work, and I made 35 cents an hour. And at my first duties were to run the machine that sliced the bread. Put it at the top and it would slide down, and you had to wrap it. So I did that, and then they let me come out and do the counter work, wait on customers. But then you had to be sure you gave the right change. So that was something that I had to be very, very careful of. But I met a lot of nice people, people that lived around there. We were across the street from the original courthouse downtown. Had that big soldier standing out in front. I don't know where that is nowadays, but it would be interesting to see it displayed again. But yep, 35 cents an hour. From that point on, I bought my own clothes. And I paid $8 for a all-wool sweater. It was beautiful. Never saw another one like it.
So how'd you meet him? What was he like when you
Out
met
of jail, Clark.
him? So did you like him when you met him?
He was kind of a quiet person, wasn't he? I don't know. He worked across the railroad tracks in engineering, and he came across me. I don't know, somehow or other we met that way. But the Abramson family lived out on Spring Creek Road, and real close to what is now North 2nd Street. Towards the back is this big I call it a mansion, a big house. It was designed and built by Just Barloga, who was a famous architect in Rockford. He did all the big homes. That was the Abramson home. And it was nice. It was well designed, beautiful. And then there was a outside of the house, on the back side, there was a little hill going down, and was there a creek back there? Yeah, and that fed into Rock River. But it was a Mediterranean style home. It was beautiful. Just Barloga did that.
So did you guys strike it off together when you first met, or?
He was quiet, but we got along fine. But then later on, things started going bad, and we each went our own way. And he ended up being married to a very nice lady. And I had a couple of marriages after that.
Yes. Do you remember how he proposed to you?
Not at all.
Really?
No.
Was it love at first sight when you met him?
No. Mm-mm. No, he was just somebody that, he was in engineering, and he was not able to be in the service because as a young boy, he had done something and glass went across his eye, so he had a damaged eye. He wasn't able to get into the Army during World War II. So he was valued at J.O. Clark, isn't it? He went to Purdue. Graduated from Purdue, I had a degree from there.
So what was early married life like for you guys?
I don't remember too much about it. I'm trying to remember where we even lived. Oh, we got married at Bethesda Church in I believe it was September of '47. So I had just been out of high school a year, and then first child was born in 1950. So I was 22 when my first child was born.
Is that you?
No.
No.
That would be my older brother David. He's 2 years older.
He's the one that lives out in Philadelphia.
So there's three of you.
There's 3 boys and 1 girl.
And all 3 boys were born in September. How do you explain that?
What is the one thing that has happened in your life that has made you the person that you are or became?
I'm not aware of any one particular thing, but in traveling through my life and working here or doing this or that or taking care of the children, the wonderful time in my life was raising my 3 sons alone, and I mean that. I mean it. And things could have gone bad, because you were like at least junior high school. And Dave was out 5 o'clock in the morning delivering newspaper. When I think back now, oh, what are you doing out at that time? But he had a newspaper route, and the money he earned was his. And then he ended up, he bought a car. I don't remember he always had Cadillacs, didn't he? And then Chuck got a job. Well, I don't remember what your job was. Were you working at the
Jerry's.
Where?
Hamburger Jerry's.
Oh yeah, Jerry's Hamburgers on East State. But my boys went out and they did nice things. They got jobs. They earned their own spending money, and they never, ever, ever gave me any trouble. I don't know why, because being a single parent, you're going to do things that they end up disliking or holding against you. But they've all been exceptionally good to me. I have no complaints.
That must have been rather difficult for you, being a single parent raising 3 boys.
And I worked.
What were you doing for a job then?
Oh, I had to work. Well, we'd buy clothing.
What job did you have at that time?
I don't remember. Oh, I worked for, one of the jobs was, I worked up at Canfield Clinic, which was on the corner of North Alpine and Guilford Road. It's been torn down. I worked there. I started out in the ear, nose, and throat department, and I also worked in internal medicine, and I worked there 10 years. And then I had a chance to go with one doctor, which I did, and then I was with him for 9 years. And I think that came around to about retirement time, something like that. So a great portion of my after high school jobs were in the medical profession. And maybe that 1 year of nurses training might have been beneficial. But I met a lot of nice doctors. They were very nice to me. Had no complaints.
So if you could sit Sophie down and give her some advice about life, what would you say to her?
Well, take good care of yourself. Keep the proper thoughts. Don't think bad things. But an important part is being nice to other people, and if you can help them, maybe mentally or physically, mentally talking to them, give them a chance to somebody to talk to and let them share their bad thoughts or their experiences with you. And if you can help them physically, like take them to the grocery store or something like that, fine, do it. You need to teach your children to be kind to other people. And if you can find a way to help them, do it. You'll never regret it. So I had a few times I could help people. I have no regrets. None. I've had a good life. I'm lucky.